7 coneflower secrets that will transform your garden this summer. Most gardeners think coneflowers are easy. Plant them, water them occasionally, and enjoy a few flowers every summer. At least that's what most people believe. And honestly, that's exactly why so many gardeners never see what coneflowers are truly capable of. Because while some gardens produce a handful of blooms, others become covered in hundreds of flowers. Butterflies everywhere, bees constantly visiting, goldfinches feeding on seed heads, and wave after wave of colorful blooms lasting for months. The same plant, the same summer, the same growing season. So what's the difference? That matters more than people realize. Because the secret isn't luck, and it's definitely not expensive fertilizer. The secret is understanding a few simple principles that experienced gardeners have quietly used for years. And, honestly, most beginners never hear about them. Now here's the hidden truth. Many coneflower problems begin long before flowering starts. The wrong location, too much water, poor pruning habits, overfeeding. Simple mistakes that prevent these incredible plants from reaching their full potential. That changes everything. Because once you understand what coneflowers actually want, they often become one of the easiest and most rewarding flowers in the entire garden. Now here's where things get interesting. One secret on today's list can dramatically increase the number of blooms. Another helps flowers last much longer during summer heat. And the number one secret may completely transform how your garden looks every year moving forward. Experienced gardeners understand something important. Coneflowers aren't just flowers. They're ecosystem builders, pollinator magnets, low-maintenance performers, and some of the most reliable perennials you can grow. Imagine this: a warm July afternoon, purple, pink, orange, yellow, and white coneflowers swaying gently in the breeze, butterflies floating from bloom to bloom, bees humming constantly through the garden, goldfinches perched on seed heads later in the season, and somehow, the entire landscape feels more alive, more colorful, more natural. That's what today's video is all about. Not simply growing coneflowers, growing extraordinary coneflowers. So whether you're planting your first echinacea this year, or trying to get bigger blooms from plants you already have, stay until the end. Because these 7 secrets could completely transform your garden this summer. There's a reason coneflowers have become one of America's favorite perennials. Few flowers offer this combination of beauty, toughness, and reliability. Bright daisy-like blooms standing tall beneath summer sunshine. Months of color when many flowers begin fading. Pollinators everywhere. And year after year, the plants return stronger than before. That emotional payoff is enormous, especially for homeowners who want beautiful gardens without spending every weekend maintaining them. But here's what most beginners don't realize. The gardeners growing spectacular coneflowers aren't working harder. They're working smarter. They understand what the plant naturally wants. And once you understand those same principles, everything changes. More blooms, longer flowering, stronger plants, more butterflies, more enjoyment, and less work. So let's begin with one of the biggest coneflower secrets experienced gardeners understand better than anyone else. Secret 7. Stop babying your coneflowers. Less water equals better plants. This secret surprises almost every new coneflower grower. And honestly, it's responsible for more weak, floppy, disappointing plants than most people realize. Because when homeowners buy a new flower, their first instinct is usually the same. Water it often, protect it, pamper it, give it extra attention. And that sounds reasonable. After all, most plants appreciate a little extra care. But coneflowers are different. That matters more than people realize. Because these plants evolved in some of the toughest environments imaginable. Open prairies, hot summers, dry conditions, relentless sunshine, strong winds. And year after year, they learned how to survive. That changes everything. Because coneflowers don't want to be treated like delicate greenhouse flowers. They want to be treated like the tough prairie survivors they are. Now here's the hidden truth. Many gardeners accidentally weaken their coneflowers by giving them too much water. The roots stay near the surface. The plants become dependent, the stems become softer, and flowering often suffers. Experienced gardeners understand something important. A coneflower that works a little harder often becomes a much stronger plant. Now here's where things get interesting. Once established, coneflowers can tolerate dry conditions remarkably well, much better than many homeowners realize. And when roots are encouraged to search deeper for moisture, the plant becomes stronger, more resilient, more drought tolerant, and often produces better flowers. That changes everything, especially during the hottest part of summer. Now, imagine two coneflower plants. One receives water every day. The soil stays constantly moist. The roots remain shallow. The stems become weaker. The flowers perform reasonably well. The second plant receives deep watering only when necessary. The roots grow deeper. The stems become stronger. The flowers stand taller. And the plant handles summer heat with ease. A few years later, the difference becomes dramatic. And honestly, most gardeners never realize watering habits created the gap. Now here's another hidden benefit. Slightly drier conditions often reduce disease problems. Less moisture around the crown. Better airflow. Healthier roots. Experienced gardeners understand. Healthy roots create healthy flowers. Everything begins underground. That simple lesson changes everything. Now here's something many beginners learn too late. Wilted leaves during extreme afternoon heat don't always mean the plant needs water. Sometimes the plant is simply responding to high temperatures, and by evening, it often recovers naturally. Experienced gardeners understand this. They check the soil before watering. Not the clock, not their routine, the soil. That small habit prevents countless mistakes. Now imagine this. A hot July afternoon. Most flowers are struggling, but your coneflowers remain standing tall. Purple blooms glowing beneath bright sunshine. Butterflies drifting through the garden. Bees moving constantly from flower to flower. And the plants look completely at home. Because honestly, they are. This is exactly the environment they evolved to handle. Expert tip. During the first growing season, water regularly while roots establish. But after that, allow the soil to dry moderately between waterings. Deep watering is almost always better than frequent shallow watering. Your coneflowers will often reward you with stronger stems, healthier roots, and better flowering. And honestly, most gardeners are amazed by how much better coneflowers perform when they're given a little more independence. But the next secret may be even more important. Because many homeowners accidentally plant coneflowers in locations where they'll never produce the massive flower displays these plants are famous for. Secret 6. Give coneflowers all the sun they can get. If coneflowers could choose one thing for themselves, it would probably be sunlight. Lots of sunlight. And honestly, more sunlight than many gardeners think. That matters more than people realize. Because many homeowners place coneflowers wherever there's available space. A partially shaded bed, beside larger shrubs, near growing trees. And while the plants may survive, they rarely thrive. That changes everything. Because coneflowers are prairie plants, and prairies don't have much shade. Now here's the hidden truth. Sunlight influences nearly every part of coneflower performance. Flower production, stem strength, plant shape, disease resistance, even pollinator activity. Experienced gardeners understand this. The more sunlight coneflowers receive, the more impressive they often become. Now here's where things get interesting. Many coneflower varieties perform best with 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight daily, sometimes even more. That's when the biggest flower displays usually happen. That's when stems remain sturdy. That's when pollinators arrive in huge numbers. And honestly, that's when gardens begin looking truly spectacular. Now imagine two coneflower patches. One receives abundant sunshine all day long. The flowers stand tall. The blooms are abundant. Butterflies visit constantly. The second patch receives only partial sunlight. Flowering declines. Stems lean. The display feels smaller, less dramatic. A few seasons later, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Experienced gardeners understand. Sunlight isn't just important, it's foundational. Now here's another hidden benefit. Full sun helps dry foliage quickly after rain or morning dew. That reduces disease pressure naturally. Healthier plants create better blooms, and better blooms create better gardens. That changes everything. Now here's something many beginners learn too late. Coneflowers often tell you when they're not receiving enough sunlight. The stems stretch, the plants lean, flower production drops, and the entire plant begins searching for brighter conditions. Experienced gardeners recognize those signals immediately. Now imagine this. A bright summer morning. Hundreds of coneflower blooms glowing beneath golden sunlight. Butterflies drifting through the garden. Bees humming from flower to flower. The plant standing strong and upright against a clear blue sky. And somehow, the entire landscape feels alive. That's the power of proper sunlight. Expert tip. Choose the sunniest location available when planting coneflowers. Think long-term. Remember that nearby trees and shrubs will continue growing over time. Because sunlight isn't just important this year. It's important 5 years from now. And honestly, that single decision can determine whether your coneflowers become good or extraordinary. But the next secret may surprise many gardeners, because it involves something most homeowners think helps flowers bloom better, when it often does the exact opposite. Secret 5. Stop over-fertilizing your coneflowers. This secret surprises many gardeners. And honestly, it sounds completely backwards, because most people assume more fertilizer means more flowers, more nutrients, more growth, more blooms, more success. But here's the problem. Coneflowers don't always agree. That matters more than people realize. Because many homeowners accidentally create giant leafy plants with fewer flowers than they expected. And honestly, they often spend money creating the problem. Now here's the hidden truth. Coneflowers evolved in prairie soils that weren't especially rich. They learned to thrive without constant feeding, without heavy fertilizer programs, without endless soil amendments. That changes everything. Because when gardeners apply excessive fertilizer, especially high nitrogen fertilizer, the plant often shifts its priorities. Instead of producing flowers, it starts producing leaves, more stems, more foliage, more green growth, and fewer blooms. Experienced gardeners understand something important. The goal isn't maximum growth. The goal is maximum flowering. Those are not always the same thing. Now here's where things get interesting. Too much fertilizer can also create another problem. Weak stems. The plant grows quickly. The stems stretch. The flowers become heavy. And suddenly, the entire plant begins flopping over. That changes everything, especially when you're trying to create a beautiful summer display. Now imagine 2 coneflower plants. One receives heavy fertilizer throughout the growing season. The leaves become enormous. The growth looks impressive, but flowering remains average. The second receives only moderate nutrition. The plant stays balanced, compact, covered in blooms. Butterflies visit constantly. And honestly, the second plant often becomes far more beautiful. Experienced gardeners understand this. Flowers create the show, not leaves. Now here's another hidden benefit. Plants growing in moderate conditions often become tougher, more resilient, better adapted to drought, better adapted to heat. And those qualities matter enormously during summer. Now here's something many beginners learn too late. Healthy soil matters far more than heavy fertilizer. Compost, organic matter, mulch. These improve soil naturally without encouraging excessive growth. That simple lesson changes everything. Because healthy soil supports healthy plants for years. Expert tip. If your coneflowers are growing well and flowering normally, you may not need fertilizer at all. A light application of compost in spring is often enough. And honestly, many experienced gardeners intentionally do less. Now imagine this. A midsummer garden filled with coneflowers. Dozens of blooms standing above healthy green foliage. Butterflies floating through the flowers. Goldfinches arriving later in the season. And plants that look strong instead of floppy. That's what happens when flowering becomes the priority. And honestly, Most gardeners are surprised by how much better coneflowers perform when they're not overfed. But the next secret may be responsible for the longest blooming season you've ever seen from coneflowers. Secret 4. Deadhead for more blooms or don't, depending on your goal. This secret is where many gardeners become confused. And honestly, that's understandable, because you'll often hear two completely different pieces of advice. Always deadhead your coneflowers. Or, never deadhead your coneflowers. So which one is correct? The answer may surprise you, because both can be right. That changes everything. Now here's the hidden truth. Deadheading simply means removing spent flowers before they produce seeds. When you remove old blooms, the plant often responds by producing more flowers, more buzz, more color, more blooms throughout summer. Experienced gardeners understand this. The plant is being encouraged to continue flowering rather than focusing on reproduction. And honestly, the results can be dramatic. Now, here's where things get interesting. Imagine two identical coneflower plants. One is deadheaded regularly. The other is left completely untouched. During summer, the deadheaded plant often produces significantly more flowers. The display lasts longer. The garden remains colorful. The blooms keep coming. That matters enormously, especially for homeowners who want continuous color. But here's the other side of the story. When flowers are left on the plant, something beautiful happens. The seed heads develop, and those seed heads become a food source for goldfinches and other birds. Now imagine this. Late summer turning into autumn. Most flowers have faded, but goldfinches cling to dried coneflower seed heads, gently swaying in the breeze, feeding naturally, bringing movement and life to the garden. And honestly, many gardeners love that just as much as the flowers. Experienced gardeners understand something important. There isn't one correct choice, only different goals. That changes everything, because now you can garden intentionally. Want maximum blooms? Deadhead regularly. Want winter interest and bird activity? Leave some seed heads standing. Want both? Deadhead early in the season and leave the final blooms intact. That's exactly what many experienced gardeners do. Expert tip: remove spent flowers throughout summer, then allow late-season blooms to develop seed heads for birds and winter beauty. That often provides the best of both worlds. Now imagine this: months of colorful blooms during summer, followed by goldfinches feeding on seed heads during autumn. A garden that remains beautiful long after many flowers disappear. That's the unique magic of coneflowers. And honestly, very few perennials offer so much value from a single plant. But the next secret may be one of the biggest reasons experienced gardeners have larger, healthier coneflower clumps every year. Secret 3. Divide older coneflowers before they decline. This is one of the least talked about coneflower secrets. And honestly, most gardeners don't discover it until their plants begin struggling. Everything starts out beautifully. The flowers are large. The blooms are abundant. The plant looks healthy. Year after year, it grows larger, and larger, and larger. Then something unexpected happens. Flower production starts declining. The center of the plant begins looking thinner. Growth becomes uneven, and the garden slowly loses some of its magic. That matters more than people realize, because many homeowners assume the plant is simply getting old. But often, the solution is surprisingly simple. Division. That changes everything. Now here's the hidden truth. Many coneflowers naturally form larger clumps over time. As years pass, the outer portions remain vigorous, but the center may gradually become crowded and less productive. Experienced gardeners understand something important. A plant that appears tired may simply need more space. Now here's where things get interesting. When mature coneflower clumps are divided, each section receives more room, more resources, more sunlight, more airflow, and often responds with vigorous new growth. And honestly, the transformation can be remarkable. Now imagine two mature coneflower clumps. One remains crowded year after year. The center weakens. Flower production declines. the display slowly becomes less impressive. The second clump is divided every few years. Fresh sections are replanted. New growth emerges. Flowering increases. And the garden becomes even more beautiful than before. That's the difference experienced gardeners understand. Now here's another hidden benefit. Division creates free plants. That matters enormously, because a single healthy coneflower clump can often become several new plants. More flowers, more pollinators, more color throughout the landscape, without spending another dollar. Experienced gardeners love this, because the garden expands itself. That changes everything, especially for homeowners who want bigger displays without bigger budgets. Now here's something many beginners learn too late. The best time to divide coneflowers is often early spring or early fall, when temperatures are cooler, when roots can establish more easily, and when stress on the plant remains lower. That simple timing often determines success. Expert tip: if a coneflower clump is 3 to 5 years old and flowering seems to be declining, consider dividing it. You may be amazed at how quickly performance improves. Now imagine this: a garden once filled with aging plants, suddenly renewed. Fresh coneflowers blooming throughout the landscape, butterflies visiting every corner, the entire garden feeling vibrant again. That's the power of division. And honestly, many gardeners wait far too long before trying it. But the next secret may be responsible for turning a beautiful coneflower garden into a pollinator paradise. Secret 2. Plant coneflowers in groups, not individually. This secret changes how your garden feels. And honestly, most homeowners make the same mistake. They buy a coneflower, plant it here, another one over there, maybe a third somewhere else. Each plant looks nice, but the overall effect feels ordinary. That matters more than people realize, because nature rarely plants flowers one at a time. Prairies don't grow that way. Wildflower meadows don't grow that way. And pollinators don't prefer that either. That changes everything. Now here's the hidden truth. Coneflowers become dramatically more impressive when planted in groups. Not rows, not scattered. Groups, clusters, drifts of color. Experienced gardeners understand this. One coneflower is attractive. 7 coneflowers together become unforgettable. Now here's where things get interesting. Pollinators notice larger flower displays more easily. Butterflies, bees, beneficial insects. They're naturally drawn toward concentrated sources of nectar. And honestly, the difference can be astonishing. Now imagine a single coneflower growing alone. A butterfly may visit occasionally. Now imagine a cluster of 15 blooming coneflowers. The area suddenly becomes alive. Butterflies floating constantly above the flowers. Bees moving from bloom to bloom. Goldfinches arriving later for seeds. The garden feels dynamic, living, connected. That emotional payoff becomes enormous. Because people don't simply admire the flowers, they experience the life surrounding them. Now here's another hidden benefit. Mass plantings create stronger visual impact, especially from a distance. A single flower may disappear into the landscape. A large grouping becomes a focal point, a statement, a destination within the garden. Experienced gardeners understand this. Big impact often comes from repetition, not complexity. That changes everything. Now here's something many beginners learn too late. Grouping plants also creates a more natural appearance. The garden feels less formal, less forced, more connected to nature. And that's exactly why coneflowers look so beautiful in prairie-style landscapes. Expert tip: plant coneflowers in groups of at least 3, 5, or 7 whenever possible. The larger the grouping, the stronger the visual and ecological impact. Now imagine this: a midsummer garden, dozens of coneflowers swaying together beneath bright sunshine, butterflies everywhere, bees humming constantly, the entire planting glowing with color and movement. And honestly, that's when coneflowers become truly spectacular. But the final secret may be the most powerful one of all, because it's the difference between growing coneflowers and creating a garden that transforms itself year after year.